The night it ended, I was sitting in my car outside a Kroger with a list on my phone that said eggs, coffee, dish soap, and movie tickets with a little heart next to it. Yeah, that heart did not age well. My phone buzzed. Not a call, a text from Megan. Can you come up? We need to talk. That sentence is basically the check engine light of relationships. You don't ignore it, but you also don't feel great about what's coming. I drove the 2 minutes back to her apartment, parked in the same spot I always did, and just sat there for a second with the engine off. Quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own brain doing math it shouldn't be doing. And before I even got out, I saw Riley's car. Megan's best friend. Riley was always there. Like a lamp. Like Wi-Fi. Like something you assume is part of the apartment package. Here's the thing. If you've ever been in a relationship where you feel like you're dating someone and their best friend is the plus one you didn't RSVP for, you already know where this goes. And if you don't know, stick around because I didn't either, and I got a front row seat to a situation I wouldn't wish on my worst coworker. I'm Ethan, 30 at the time, living in Columbus, Ohio. I worked help desk for a mid-sized logistics company, the kind of job where people only remember you exist when their password stops working and suddenly it's a national emergency. Megan was 28, marketing coordinator, always busy, always networking, always just 5 minutes away from becoming the person she described in her own head. She was smart, funny when she wanted to be, and had a laugh that could trick you into thinking everything was fine even when it wasn't. And Riley was Megan's best friend since college. 29. Pilates. Podcasts. A vibe that said, I'm laid back, while somehow controlling the entire room without raising her voice. When I met Megan, she told me early, I don't really have many friends. It's basically just Riley. I remember saying, that's okay. One real friend is better than 10 fake ones. Megan smiled like I'd given the right answer on a quiz. Riley smiled too. Not a warm smile, more like a noted smile. The first time I realized Riley wasn't just a friend, it was a Friday night, maybe a month into dating. Megan and I planned to grab tacos and catch a late movie. I was at work, clock watching, imagining guac when Megan texted, Riley's coming too. She's been stressed. I typed, okay, because what else do you type without sounding like you're trying to separate someone from oxygen? At the taco place, Riley slid into the booth like it was her reservation. Megan said, Ethan, you remember Riley. Riley looked me up and down like she was assessing a used car listing. Hey, I said. How's it going? Fine, she said, then turned to Megan. So, tell me everything. And just like that, I became the guy sitting across from two people who were on their own date, with me as background music. I tried to steer it back. So, Megan, you still want to see that new thriller? Megan nodded. Yeah, totally. Riley cut in. I don't like scary movies. Megan blinked. Oh, right. Maybe we do something else. I laughed because it was either that or stare into the salsa like it had answers. Or, I said, we can still go. You don't have to love it. Riley shrugged. I just don't see why you'd pick something I hate. And there it was. The first time I heard we in a sentence that wasn't supposed to include her. After dinner, we didn't go to the thriller. We went to a little outdoor shopping center and walked around stores we didn't need, while Megan and Riley talked in that rapid-fire shorthand best friends have. At one point, Megan grabbed my hand and squeezed it like she remembered I was there. I squeezed back, trying to be cool. So this is fun. Megan smiled. Right. Riley didn't smile. We should stop by that candle store. I need a new one. Megan lit up. Yes. I followed them into a candle store and spent 20 minutes inhaling autumn porch breeze while thinking about my life choices. On the drive home, Megan said, thanks for being flexible. She's important to me. I get it, I said. And at the time, I meant it. Because look, I didn't want to be that guy. The jealous guy. The insecure guy. The guy who hears best friend and starts acting like a prison guard. I liked Megan. I wanted to be the calm, grown adult. Plus, in my head, I had this rule, a girlfriend with a bunch of guy friends? That's a headache I didn't need. Megan didn't have that. She had one friend, a woman. What's the harm? Turns out, the harm is that you can still get edged out of your own relationship by someone who's technically not your competition, until they are. Month 2. Every plan included Riley. Megan would say, let's go to brunch Sunday. I'd say, perfect. She'd say, Riley's been wanting to try that place too. Sometimes I'd joke, do we get a punch card? After 10 meals, does Riley finally let me sit next to you? Megan would laugh. Stop. Riley would stare like I'd insulted her family. Month 3. Riley wasn't just present, she was consulted. Megan and I would be looking at apartments online, just casually. Megan said, this one has a great kitchen. I said, yeah, and it's close to my work. Megan nodded, then immediately texted Riley. Riley replied in seconds. Too far from me. Megan frowned. Yeah, that's true. I looked at Megan. Wait, too far from her. Megan said, well, I don't want to be far from Riley. I try to keep my voice light. Are we picking an apartment for us or for your friend? Megan's tone sharpened. Why are you making it a thing? I leaned back. I'm not. I'm just asking. Riley, of course, heard about it later. Because Riley heard about everything. The next time I saw Riley, she took a sip of her iced coffee and said, Megan says you don't like that we're close. I blinked. That's not what I said. Riley tilted her head. What did you say? I said I want space for our relationship, I said. That seems normal. Riley's smile was small and cold. We've always been close. Megan doesn't do well without me. And then, like she was explaining a weather pattern, she added, you'll have to get used to it. Megan chimed in like a referee. Can we not fight? I hate tension. I looked at Megan. I'm not trying to fight. I'm trying to date you. Megan gave me that look that says, you're making me choose a side, even though I hadn't asked for that. I'd asked for Tuesday night dinner without a third person. It got worse in tiny ways. Death by 1,000. Oh, Riley's coming. Movie night at my place. Riley happened to be nearby. A weekend trip I planned. 2 nights in a little cabin area by Hocking Hills. Megan told me 2 days before, Riley's going through a lot. She might come for 1 night. Histoire de hair. Megan, it's a couple's trip. Megan sighed, like I was refusing to donate blood. It's just 1 night. Don't be dramatic. I said, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being normal. Riley did come. Of course she did. At the cabin, Megan and Riley took the bedroom because it's colder by the window and Riley has neck issues. I took the pull-out couch. I slept on a mattress that sounded like a bag of tortilla chips every time I breathed. At breakfast, Megan kissed my cheek and said, thanks for being chill. Riley said, he's learning. Learning. Like I was a dog. On the drive back, I kept my eyes on the road, hands locked at 10 and 2 like I was taking a driving test. Megan was in the passenger seat, scrolling. Riley was behind her, laughing at something on Megan's phone. Riley said, show me that one again. Megan held the phone back so Riley could see. I said, hey, can I get a turn with my girlfriend? Megan laughed. Ethan. Riley said, relax. I swallowed words I knew would turn into a whole argument. Instead, I said, sure. And that's kind of how it went. I kept swallowing. Megan kept laughing it off. Riley kept pushing. I tried the mature route. Communication. Clear, calm, adult sentences. One Tuesday night, I met Megan at her place. Riley wasn't there. Miracle. Megan kicked off her shoes and said, finally. Just us. I said, yeah, I've been wanting that. Megan leaned into me on the couch. For 5 minutes, it felt like what dating is supposed to feel like. Then Megan's phone lit up. Riley. Megan picked up immediately. Hey, I didn't say anything. I just watched. Megan's face changed. Concern. Urgency. Wait, what happened? Megan said, no, don't cry. I'm coming. She hung up and started grabbing her purse. I stood. Is she okay? Megan said she had a bad day. I nodded slowly. Okay, do you want me to come with you? Megan looked at me like I suggested we bring a marching band. No, she just needs me. Right now, I asked. Megan snapped. Ethan, please don't do this. I didn't raise my voice. I'm not doing anything. I'm asking if our 1 night together matters. Megan froze. Then she said the sentence that should have been my early warning siren. You're not competing with Riley. Histoire de hair. It kind of feels like I am. Megan's eyes flashed. That's your problem. She left. I stayed on her couch for about 30 seconds. Then I walked out too. Not angry stomping. Just done. I drove home, stopped at a gas station, bought a microwave burrito that tasted like regret, and ate it in my kitchen standing up. The next day at work, My coworker Darnell noticed my face. He said, "You look like somebody canceled your weekend." I said, "My girlfriend's best friend is basically the third person in our relationship." Darnell leaned back in his chair. "So you're in a throuple and you didn't sign the paperwork?" "Pretty much." He pointed a pen at me. "You ever tell her straight up?" I tried. Darnell shook his head. "Nah, I mean straight up. Like, I'm not doing this anymore." I sighed. "I don't want to be controlling." Darnell laughed. "Man, asking for a date without a chaperone is not controlling. It's dating." He wasn't wrong. I tried again. Different approach. Not during a fight. Not with sarcasm. I took Megan to a little diner near her apartment, the kind with bottomless coffee and booths that squeak. Megan smiled at the waitress like she was running for office. Then she turned to me. "Okay, what's up?" I said, "I like you. I like being with you. But I don't feel like we have our own space." Megan frowned. "This is about Riley again." "It's about us," I said. "I want nights that are just us. I want to plan something without checking with her. I want to feel like your boyfriend, not an optional add-on." Megan tapped her nails on the table. "Riley is my person." I nodded. "Okay, I'm not saying you can't have your person. I'm saying I need to be yours too, at least sometimes." Megan's voice went flat. "So you want me to see her less?" "I want you to see me more," I said. Megan stared at her water like it offended her. Then she said, "You don't get it." "Help me get it," I said. Megan exhaled. "Riley has always been there. Every time I've needed someone, it's been Riley. She understands me." I asked, "Do I not?" Megan didn't answer. She just looked away. The waitress brought our food, and we ate in a weird quiet. Megan kept checking her phone. I tried to joke lightly. "If Riley calls, should I just scoot over and let her sit in my seat?" Megan's eyes narrowed. "Can you not?" I held up my hands. "Okay." Then Megan's phone buzzed. She glanced. Her face softened. "Riley again." Megan didn't pick up, but she texted fast under the table, like a teenager in class. I watched. Then I said, very calmly, "Is she texting you right now?" Megan looked guilty for half a second. "She just needs a quick answer." I nodded. "Right." Megan finished her fries, pushed the plate away, and said, "You're making this exhausting." That was the moment I realized something. Megan didn't see Riley as a part of her life. Megan saw Riley as the center, and everything else, me included, was orbiting. And if you're orbiting someone, you don't get to complain about gravity. Still, I stayed. Because I liked Megan. Because the good moments were good. And because a lot of us are stubborn in the dumbest ways. We'll stay in a burning building as long as the couch is comfortable. Around month 5, the cracks got wider. Megan started canceling our plans more. "Riley's having a thing. Riley needs me. Riley and I already planned something." One Saturday, I drove across town to pick Megan up for a small get-together with my friend Luis and his wife. Just pizza, board games, normal adult stuff. Megan opened the door, and Riley was behind her, already wearing her shoes. I blinked. "Hey, Riley." Riley smiled. "Hey." Megan said, "So, Riley's coming." I stared at Megan. "Megan, this is with my friends." Megan's tone turned sharp. And you didn't ask," I said. Megan threw her hands up. "It's not a big deal." Louise called me as I stood there. I answered and tried to sound normal. "Yo, we're on our way." Louise said, "You good?" I looked at Megan and Riley. "Yeah, I'm great." We showed up and Louise clocked it immediately. He pulled me aside while Megan and Riley acted like they'd been invited. Louise whispered, "Bro, are you okay with this?" I forced a smile. Apparently, I live in a group project now. Luis is Nortez. "You want me to say something?" "No," I said quickly. "Don't." But his wife, Marissa, didn't need permission. She's one of those sweet people with a spine made of steel. At one point, Megan was talking about a weekend trip we took, meaning her and Riley. Marissa asked politely, "Ethan, do you two ever do trips alone?" Megan answered for me, "Well, not like that." Marissa paused. "Not like what?" Megan smiled too hard. "We're just social." Riley nodded like a proud parent. "Megan doesn't do well one-on-one pressure." Marissa looked at me. I gave her the smallest shake of my head. "Please don't." Marissa didn't push, but her eyes said, "Oh, honey." On the way home, Megan was quiet. Riley was texting. I drove. Finally, Megan said, "Marissa was kind of rude." I laughed once short. "Rude?" Megan snapped. She was implying things. I kept my eyes on the road. Maybe she was noticing things. Megan's voice rose. Why are you always on their side? Ich glänzte her. I'm on the side where I get to have a relationship. Megan went cold. Then maybe you shouldn't be with me. That hit. Not like a punch, more like someone shutting a door you didn't realize was holding the house together. I said, is that what you want? Megan didn't answer. She just stared out the window. Riley texted in the back seat. Tap, 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 like a metronome counting down. 2 weeks later, it happened. The breakup. Back to the Kroger night. Back to Riley's car. Back to we need to talk. I walked up the stairs, knocked, and Megan opened the door. She looked prepared, like she'd rehearsed. Riley was on the couch, sitting upright, hands folded like this was a meeting. I stepped in and said, hey. Megan said, hi. Riley said, hey. I looked between them. Okay, what's going on? Megan sat across from me. Riley stayed close, but not too close. Like she didn't want to look obvious while being extremely obvious. Megan took a breath. I'm going to just say it. I nodded. Okay. Megan's voice trembled a little. I don't think we should keep doing this. Histoire her. Doing what? This, she said, gesturing vaguely at me. Us. The concept of a boyfriend. I said why. Megan swallowed. Because I realized something. Riley's eyes stayed on Megan like a coach watching a free throw. Megan said, I've been trying to make it work, but it's not fair to you. I let out a small laugh. Wow. Concern. That's new. Megan flinched. Ethan. I held up a hand. No, keep going. What did you realize? Megan's eyes got glossy, but she didn't do the big dramatic thing. She just said it straight. I'm in love with Riley. Silence. Not a poetic silence. The kind of silence where your brain starts flipping through every memory like a cheap paperback, looking for the page where you miss the obvious. I looked at Riley. Riley looked at me, calm as a parking ticket. I looked back at Megan. You're serious. Megan nodded. Yeah. I sat there and blinked twice. Then I said, so, the whole time. Megan shook her head fast. No, not the whole time. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Riley finally spoke. We didn't plan anything. Histoire her. I didn't ask if you planned it. Megan's voice got defensive. Don't talk to her like that. I laughed again because my body was choosing humor over flipping a table. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot she's protected under your warranty. Megan's face tightened. Ethan, please. I leaned forward a little. How long have you known? Megan hesitated. That hesitation said more than her words. Riley said, softly, it's been building. I looked at Megan. And you kept me around while it was building. Megan snapped. I didn't keep you around. I loved you. I nodded slowly. Okay. Then why does it feel like I was the practice run? Megan's eyes flashed. That's not fair. I shrugged. We're past fair, Megan. Riley stood up. Ethan, this is hard for her. I looked at Riley. It's hard for her. Riley's face stayed calm. She didn't want to hurt you. I said, and yet here I am. Megan reached for my hand. I didn't pull away fast. I just didn't take it either. Megan said, you're a good guy. You deserve someone who can give you what you need. I nodded. And what I needed was to not be in a 3-person relationship that I didn't sign up for. Megan's voice sharpened. It wasn't like that. I looked around her apartment. Riley's shoes by the door. Riley's sweater on a chair. A second toothbrush in the bathroom cup. It took me half a second to notice because my brain finally stopped defending Megan. I pointed toward the bathroom. Do you want to try that again? Megan's face went red. That's just because she stays over sometimes. I stared. Sometimes. Riley said, Ethan. I held up my hand. No, you don't get to Ethan me like we're friends. Riley's expression tightened for the first time. Okay. Megan's voice went small. I'm sorry. I sat back. I thought I'd feel crushed. Honestly, I felt clarified, like a headache finally turning into a diagnosis. Still painful, but at least you know what you're dealing with. I stood up. So that's it. Megan stood too. Ethan, I grabbed my jacket. Do you want me to say congratulations? Because I'm fresh out of confetti. Megan's eyes watered. Please don't be mean. I nodded. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to leave with my dignity. Riley moved slightly like she might block me, then didn't. Megan followed me to the door. Can we talk later? Like after things calm down. I looked at her. You mean after you move on, and I'm supposed to become your friendly ex? Megan whispered. I don't want to lose you completely. I gave her a tired half smile. Megan, you already did. And I left. In the car, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there and stared at the steering wheel. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Megan. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen like this. I stared at it, then typed, take care. That was it. Not dramatic. Not a speech. Just 2 words. The next few days were weird. Not I can't function weird. More like my routine got unplugged weird. I went to work. Reset passwords. Answered tickets. Watched people complain about printers like the printer personally insulted their mother. Darnell asked, so? You and Megan good. I looked at him. She left me for Riley. Darnell's eyebrows went up. Her best friend, Riley? The very same, I said. Darnell leaned back. So you weren't a boyfriend. You were a placeholder. I winced. That's a word. Darnell nodded. What you gonna do? I said, eat chicken and stare at walls, probably. He pointed at me. Nope. You're coming to the gym after work. I laughed. I don't even own gym shoes. You do now, he said. We're going to Target. That's how it started. Not some movie montage. Just a coworker dragging me out of my apartment so I wouldn't turn into a human couch cushion. I worked out badly for 2 weeks. I walked on the treadmill like an elderly man protecting his knees. I lifted weights with the confidence of someone defusing a bomb. Darnell kept it simple. Show up. Do the work. Go home. At night, I cooked. Real food. Not microwave burritos. I cleaned my apartment. I fixed the leaky faucet I'd been ignoring because Megan always said, we'll just get maintenance. As if my 1 bedroom had a maintenance staff. I also started doing something I'd put off, studying for an IT certification. Megan used to roll her eyes when I talked about leveling up at work. She'd say, you're fine where you are. Don't stress. Which sounds supportive until you realize don't grow can be disguised as be comfortable. I'd sit at my kitchen table with flashcards, and I'd hear Megan's old tone in my head. Not her words, her vibe. So I shut it down by doing the next flashcard anyway. A month after the breakup, Luis invited me over to watch football. Just guys, pizza, normal. Luis opened the door and said, you alive? I said, technically. He laughed and pulled me in for a quick hug. How you holding up? I shrugged. Honestly, I feel stupid. Luis handed me a plate. Don't. I took a bite and said, no, like, I ignored everything. Riley was basically living there, and I was like, wow, what great friendship. Luis chewed, then said, you wanted to see the best in her. I nodded. Yeah. Luis said, that's not stupid. That's just hopeful. I looked at him. Hopeful gets you hurt. Luis shrugged. Hopeful also gets you love when it's the right person. You just got to get better at spotting when you're not the main character in your own relationship. That hit. Not because it was poetic, but because it was practical. After that, I got practical. I stopped checking Megan's social media. I muted things. I didn't make it a big, dramatic, block everyone situation. I just removed the daily reminders. I kept my routine. Work, gym, study, sleep. Then, about 3 months after, I passed that certification. My boss pulled me in his office and said, good work. We're moving you to a higher tier. More responsibility, better pay. I walked out of that office feeling lighter. Not because money fixes heartbreak. It doesn't. But because progress fixes something else, your sense that you're stuck. I upgraded my apartment. Not a fancy downtown place with a rooftop pool. Just a nicer spot with more light and less mystery smell in the hallway. The day I moved, my neighbor, older guy named Hank who always grilled like it was his part-time job, watched me carry boxes. He said, new start. I smiled. Something like that. Hank nodded like he understood without needing details. Good. Don't stay where you're not wanted. Simple. True. And then, because life has a sense of timing that borders on rude, Megan came back into my orbit. It started with a message on a random Thursday evening. I was making spaghetti, standing there stirring sauce like I was on a cooking show nobody asked for. My phone buzzed. Megan, hey. Just hey. Like we were old pals. Like she didn't reroute my entire relationship with one sentence. I stared at it. I didn't respond. Another buzz. Megan, can we talk sometime? I've been thinking. I let the sauce simmer and my annoyance simmer with it. I texted back. About what? She replied fast. About us. About everything. I owe you an apology. I read that twice. Then I typed, "You already apologized." She sent, "Not like this. Please." I should have ignored it. But part of me wanted closure, and part of me wanted to hear what she'd say now that Riley wasn't sitting 3 feet away like a security guard. So I agreed to meet at a coffee shop on a Saturday afternoon. Public, neutral, bright lights, no couch. When I walked in, Megan was already there. She looked tired. Not messy, not dramatic. Just tired. Like she'd been carrying something and didn't know where to put it. She stood up. "Ethan." I nodded. "Megan." She tried a small smile. "You look good." I sat down. I look rested. Megan laughed once. Then her face fell. "Fair." She wrapped her hand around her cup. "I've been wanting to say, I handled everything badly." I raised my eyebrows. "That's one way to phrase it." Megan winced. "Okay. I handled it terribly." I nodded. "Better." She took a breath. "Riley and I, it's not what you think." I stared at her. "I'm going to stop you right there. I'm not doing plot twists. Just say what you mean." Megan swallowed. "We moved in together. It was supposed to be perfect. Like finally I could be with the person who always understood me." I said, "And?" Megan's eyes flicked away. "And it turns out being best friends and living together as a couple are different things." I leaned back. "No kidding." Megan's voice got tighter. "She's controlling." I lifted a finger. "Careful with that word. Let's be specific." Megan nodded quickly. "Okay." She wanted to pick everything. Where we went, who we saw, what we did. She didn't like when I wanted time alone. She didn't like my coworkers. She didn't like anything that wasn't her. I stared at her, then said, "So you got exactly what I was trying to tell you about." Megan's eyes filled a little, but she blinked it back. "Yeah." I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Reality had already done the job. Megan said, "I didn't realize how patient you were." I gave her a flat look. "Megan, patience wasn't the problem. The problem was I was lowering my standards because I wanted it to work." She nodded slowly. "I know." She hesitated, then said, "I miss you." I let that hang for a second. Then I said, "Do you miss me, or do you miss how easy I was?" Megan flinched. "That's not fair." I kept my voice calm. "It's a fair question." Megan stared at her cup. "I miss you. I miss having someone who cared about me and didn't treat my life like a schedule they owned." I nodded. "Okay." Megan looked up. "And I know I hurt you." I said, "You did." But it wasn't the kind of hurt where I fell apart. It was the kind of hurt that made things make sense. Megan whispered, "I hate that I did that to you." I shrugged. "I don't love it either, but here we are." She reached across the table, then stopped halfway, like she wasn't sure she had the right anymore. I want a chance to make it right." I sat there, thinking about all those nights where I was the third wheel. All those plans that got overwritten by Riley needs me. All those moments where I tried to be calm and got called dramatic. I looked Megan in the eye. Making it right doesn't mean getting me back. Megan's face tightened. "So you're saying no?" I nodded. "I'm saying no." Her shoulders dropped. "Because you hate me." I shook my head. "No, because I finally like my life." Megan's mouth opened, then closed. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time without Riley's commentary. I added, "And because I learned something I should have learned earlier. I'm not doing relationships where I'm competing with someone who's always in the room." Megan's voice broke a little. "I really messed up." I nodded. "Yeah, you did." She wiped her face quickly, like she was embarrassed to show emotion in a coffee shop. "Do you ever think about me?" I leaned back. "Sometimes. Mostly as a reminder." Megan gave a sad half smile. "A reminder of what?" "Of what it feels like when someone keeps you close but never really makes space for you," I said. "And I'm not signing up for that again." She nodded slowly. "I understand." I stood up. "Take care of yourself." Megan stood too. "Ethan, I'm sorry." I looked at her. "I believe you." That seemed to surprise her. Then I added, "But belief doesn't rewind time." I left, got in my car, and drove home with the windows cracked because it was one of those Ohio afternoons where the air is cold but the sun is trying. At a stoplight, I laughed quietly to myself, not because it was funny, but because life is ridiculous. 6 months of trying to be the cool boyfriend who didn't ask for too much, and the lesson ended up being embarrassingly simple. If someone always has a person who outranks you, you're not their partner. You're their convenience. And yeah, I've got my own rule now. Not some paranoid rule where everyone needs to cut off friends and live in a bunker. Just a basic adult boundary. If we're dating, we date. We don't run every decision through a third party. We don't bring a chaperone to every moment. We don't treat us like it's optional. A few weeks after that coffee shop, Darnell asked me, "So she tried to come back?" I nodded. Yeah. Darnell grinned. And I smiled. I said no. Darnell slapped my shoulder. Proud of you. That night, I went to the gym, did my workout, came home, cooked something decent, and sat on my couch in my quiet apartment. No extra toothbrush in the cup. No surprise third seat at the table. No constant buzzing phone dictating my plans. Just peace. And honestly, peace is underrated until you've dated someone who treated it like an inconvenience.